seen men build spreadsheets, swiping every day for a couple of hours and really putting
Spreadsheets?
spreadsheets, 100%. Yeah.
Do you think that's a red flag as it is?
100%. Yeah, I do. Now,
Thank you so much for coming on, Sarah. For those that don't know, you've been in the dating scene in terms of coaching men for a number of years, and you're officially the first female guest I've had on. So I'm pumped. Yeah, what's up? Let's go. Yeah.
hopefully I do you proud in your community.
No, so thank you for coming on, making a little bit of time tonight to discuss dating and to discuss what men have to work through in 2024 in this sort of space, because it is a tricky space. And, typically when blokes go to talk about it with other men, it's not an easy one to bring up. So I'd love to get your insights, especially with the clients you work with over time. But, for people that want to know a little bit about yourself, how would you best describe what you do in a short 30-second spiel?
30-second spiel. I'm a dating coach for men. I've been doing it since 2018 when I was in LA. I started working for a global dating company over there and traveled around the world running seminars, so workshops with men where we would address, and everything to do with dating, all of the challenges that guys would come up against. And then we would take it to the streets, to bars, to clubs, kind of like Hitch or Crazy Stupid Love, like Ryan Gosling, if you've seen that movie, and be there and help them approach women and get over approach anxiety, which is such a big one, and how to go from being just a friend to getting out of the friend zone. So that was my life for 2 years straight, and now I run an online version of that. 90% online, and then some clients I still see in person, and I love it. It's pretty rewarding work. Like just the other day, I was going for a run on the Esplanade, and I ran past one of my clients, and he was holding hands with a woman, and I was like, oh my God, like I just had to stop and take a video, but it's so rewarding. Like that's why I fell in love with this occupation and still do it, and can't see myself changing out of it, because it is rewarding. It's hard to see guys struggling, but when you see them finally get it and succeed, it makes it all worth it.
Out of curiosity, did he see you?
Yeah. I was running. I had my headphones in. I was like, hey, boss. I don't know why I always call my client boss. I'm like, hey, boss. And he just gave me a big smile. And then he said he told his girlfriend who I was. And I just thought that was awesome. Like he was really proud of it. Whereas I've had some experiences being a dating coach where keeping it confidential is really important for a lot of men. They don't want to admit that they have a dating coach or they get coaching. So it was just really refreshing. He's so genuine and he's so proud of the guidance that I was able to give him. And I think that's awesome. I feel like everyone should be more like that, be proud of getting coaching and getting help with things that you find hard.
And that's awesome. Like, when you talk about those movies like Hitch and Crazy Stupid Love and like all that type of stuff, like every bloke watches that and they watch Ryan Gosling approach two chicks at the bar and is like, what does he say? Like, you're a carrot or something like that. I don't know what he says. Like something stupid. And you're like, he did that so easily. It can't be that hard. And then you go do it. You fumble over your words. You look like a semi-retard, can't talk properly. You're like, oh, this is too much. You go back to the bar, you have 4 more tequilas, you go back and you try it with someone else and you realize that you need help. So, it's interesting. And I love the fact that you took that to the streets, you took that from the classroom into the real landscape. So, I asked all my previous guests that have come onto the podcast, if they had that opportunity to do a TED talk and they could sit in front of a whole bunch of men and give them the knowledge, experience and wisdom, what it would it be that they talk about? Obviously, yours is the dating game. So I'd love to go into a few different elements of the dating game. Obviously, you've talked about the approach. You've talked about how you go from just going through the approach to actually being able to converse and then doing that also in environments which aren't necessarily, in broad daylight, in a nightclub, in a bar. They're all different circumstances. So I'd love to get some pointers on how you go about that.
Yeah, well, it's so dependent, isn't it? I mean, look, I think the one thing that you will always have is your own self, which is your avatar that moves through the game of life or the game of dating, right? The dating game, because it can feel like that. And a lot of people have this negative connotation with the game, people playing games with you or it being so hard and women are always rejecting you. I think every time dating has come up around the dinner table, for example, with friends, there's always a negative story or something, some horror story that you hear that's gone on, or a huge, horrible rejection or something like that. And so I think it really depends where you're at as an individual, where your confidence is and communication skills when it comes to dating. Through my work, over the last few years, I really honed into the art of flirting, and I've found that a lot of guys really struggle with that. And I think that's something that is very playful in nature. It requires a lot of confidence to do that. It breaks through a lot of barriers, especially in, let's say, environments where you're out in public, you're at a bar, or you're walking along the street. Being able to playfully communicate with someone, break the ice, and build rapport is really important. It's like getting over that first hurdle. Then having the courage to, let's say, ask for someone's number or ask for their social media, for example. That requires, I would say, more courage than skill. And once you get over that barrier and you can tell that that person is into you, then for a lot of guys, the barrier is being able to take it from just a friendly conversation to it being something more, to it being something intimate. And that's why the art of flirting, or learning about that, I believe is such an important skill if you are out there in the dating world, because you could go on lots of dates, but women always say you're a great guy, but I don't see you in that way. And so to get to that next level, I think is where flirting comes into play. And if you're curious about it, I would say the way I approach this as a coach is being inspired by the works of Alain de Botton, and he's the founder of the School of Life. Not sure if you've heard about that, but they put out some
Certainly
really
do.
awesome content that has this humorous side to it, but it's so real, right? And
Mm.
I love all of their content, so I really bring that into how I teach guys about that. But yeah, to come full circle, I really think you've got to start with yourself. Where are you at? What are your strengths? What are you not so good at? And then start practice. And the practice is, yes, getting out there into the real world, or something that I do in my coaching programs is I actually set up mock dates where you can practice with real women, but in a training space. So, you can make all those mistakes or fumbles in a safe environment, and then take it out into the real world, onto your dates, or into the clubs, or onto the street.
Into the clubs or onto the streets. I'm really keen on getting into flirting, but before I get started, to give context, obviously you said you worked in LA. Now
Yeah.
I know who you worked with, and for men that are listening, especially of the '90s vintage, let's say, they would know and have probably read a book called The Game by Neil Strauss.
Mm.
Now, we've had a conversation prior. Obviously, you've done work with them and then have gone and really tried to help men embody things rather than just know how to pick up chicks. But what I would love to know is what your experience was like when you were working with all these guys that were teaching men how to pick up chicks. What were some of the great things that you took away from that? And what were some of the things now that you reflect back on as a coach and go, the blokes that did that were setting themselves up for potential failure?
Yeah, I've spoken about this a lot, and I've been away from it for a while now. And when I think about it, I just go, oh my, like, wow. Like, there's two sides to this for me. It's like, wow, like, what an incredible world that I was in, and all of these incredible men that I got to work with. Like, what a privilege. And then the other side to it is just cringe. Like, I just want to cringe at myself at some of the things that I was doing and that would happen on these boot camps, because I didn't know any better. Right? I was new to that world. I was new to coaching. I didn't get much training. It was sort of just being thrown into the deep end, and you're either going to swim or you sink. And so you really have to adapt and just find a way to get through it. So I think that's, where my journey started. It was like, cool, amazing opportunity. The CEO of this huge company is offering you the opportunity to pack your bags and travel around the world and run seminars every day. And so for me at 21, I was like, this is such a cool opportunity. I'm not going to say no to it. And so then I found myself running seminars with, whether it was 12 people in Oslo in Norway, or up to 1,000 people in Miami or Vegas. It was just, you've been thrust into doing this. And as much as it was about dating, it was also in the business of selling from stage. So you present a 4 to 6 hour seminar on stage, then you sell a 2 day workshop, and then you obviously fulfill on that 2 day workshop. So it, the nature of what you're doing week to week is so full on, right? Like, and there's probably 10 other coaches or around about that in the company. I was the only woman in that company, so that was also a very interesting part of my journey, just trying to gain the respect of men. So no one really took me seriously for probably 5 months, 6 months that I was traveling. And when I started, I was helping the CEO. So I would help him run his seminars. And then once I was making sales and starting to hit runs on the scoreboard, that's when they started to actually notice and go, oh, okay, maybe she, can do what we're doing. So for me on my personal journey, they were some of the challenges I came up against. And then I started to fall in love with it when I would see the impact that you could have on one person's life or a whole group of men in the space of 2 days. You would build such deep connections with them, and you would see them go from not being able to speak to a woman, like to the point shaking, quivering, like, nah, can't do it, Sarah, having to take them with you to walk up to somebody, to doing it themselves, opening up conversations with people. So yeah, I think there's lots of avenues I could go down with my journey, but they were some of the first things that popped into my mind when I reflect back on it now.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that journey for you, like obviously guys would know about people like Mystery and people like, that would, were renowned pickup artists, and, they would hear about this, but they're like, oh, is this actually true? Like, were
Mm.
they actually that capable of picking up girls as easily as they wrote in the book?
Once you're in it, right? So once you're in this world, there's sort of, if you break it down, yes, there's different approaches you can do, different openers. And, there would be, when I first started, we were still filming in-field footage. So we would actually record interactions. So let's say, yeah, you have one of the coaches approach somebody, you'd film the whole interaction. So they were good at going from, let's say, opening to getting Instagrams or numbers or a makeout, right? Like, this is how they measured the success, right? Getting a makeout,
Right.
or leading the girl from one bar to another bar, or leaving the bar altogether, right? But you don't see what goes on behind closed doors. So that's left up to the imagination, right? If someone goes home with someone, it could be an absolute disaster, but you don't see that side of it. So, and I think how they measured things is really whack, right? Now that I'm out of it, if we talk about embodying and, like, being in integrity, it's like, if you're measuring it off how far you can get it, and I'm guilty for this, right? Like, I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Like, I was, oh, I have to get all my clients to be able to, make out with a woman, or have a 3-way make out, or a 4-way make out, or a 5-way make out. It was the novelty of it, right? Like, this is where my brain was, because that's what I thought, that this is what the game was teaching. And in a lot of levels, that's what they were teaching. And that's where I think they get it wrong, or started to get it wrong. And that's when I started to sort of go, I don't know if this is where I want to go with this, because once you leave the guys and they have an awesome weekend, right? They go out, have a great time, hook up with some girls, and go, oh, that was wild. What happens on Monday? What happens on Tuesday, Wednesday? What happens next weekend? And where did these interactions go? So, short answer, yeah, they would have success. But what kind of success are you looking for? Are you looking for short-term flings and one-night stands? Or are you looking to build your skill set and confidence to be able to have great relationships that are ongoing, friendships that are ongoing? So, yeah, it just depends on how you're measuring what success is.
Sure. And I could see like a lot of men's ego getting addicted to feeling like I am worthy and valued by the opposite sex, which is,
Mm.
it's not something to shy away from. Like, to have interest from someone of the opposite sex is a big thing. And it's not easy traditionally for men. So when, I guess, a guy that has never ever felt that before gets a taste of it and has a recipe, a formula, something that they can use, you can see how that could be something that they could fall into the trap of that time and time again.
Yeah, you got to be careful with it. It's like magic, right? It's like it can be used for good or evil, and that comes down to the individual. It comes down to what your values are as a person. It comes down to what your intention is. And I was actually just talking to a client of mine who I've worked with him on and off for 5 years. He's such an incredible guy, but he learnt for years from the game, right? He learnt from all of the teachers in that space, and it's been years, probably a decade for him, and he's still dealing with some of the side effects from what he learnt. Because once you program yourself to approach dating or approach women in this way, it's really hard to shake some of those things that you condition into yourself. And then you can start overthinking, a woman's behavior, and start thinking about, oh, is it because of this, or am I simping, am I being too nice, should I have messaged her in 2 days and not 3 days? So you can really start to get into this paralysis through analysis of information that's put out there in that space. And then you spend X amount of time reversing that conditioning that you've spent years developing.
So then moving from the game to your own personal style and method, obviously, you've got the skill sets of, if you want a guy to be able to break the approach, you can break the approach. But one of the things you spoke about obviously is flirting. Now, flirting is not an easy thing because you have to read a lot of cues. You need to be able to, you know, um, do it in a way or a manner based off based off where you are, whether it's at work, whether it's at a bar, whether it's, at the coffee shop, in a way which is tasteful, but also a little bit potentially risky because it's like you're putting yourself out there. So with flirting, what are the sort of 101s that most guys need to know about flirting, and what are maybe some of the misconceptions they think flirting has to be?
I think the first misconception is that it's creepy. And every guy
Okay.
goes straight to that. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to be creepy. Like, I don't want to make a woman feel uncomfortable, Sarah." So there's this misconception that it's creepy just by nature. Like flirting is creepy and it makes women uncomfortable, and that's very far, from the truth in most cases. Obviously, there are creepy people out there. They do exist, and women have their ways of getting away from people that are creepy. But I think, yeah, a lot of guys are afraid of being creepy, and yeah, they don't need to be. I think you're spot on in saying that flirting is a risk, and it requires courage, and it requires a certain level of, you know, being comfortable with messing up, because you will, because the nature of a lot of flirting is awkward. And I think one of the first, 101s to flirting is getting comfortable with silence. I don't know how you go with silences, Steve, but it's like, let's say you were having a great conversation and then we don't know what to say, and we can get really awkward with it, or it can become a moment and you both kind of laugh at each other or look away. And so getting comfortable and being intentional with your silences is a great starting point if you want to learn how to flirt, because that's when tension is built. And if there's interest between you both, it becomes a sexual kind of tension. And yeah, a lot of that happens with nonverbal cues and silence and filling in the blanks. So flirting is very subtle in nature. And to become a great flirt, you've got to get comfortable with that. And so instead of, word vomiting through and trying to find something to say, pulling back and slowing things down. That's another, I would say, a beginner's tool to flirting is your voice. So if I start to slow things down and even lowered my voice, it like completely changes the whole feeling between us. So as a guy, what you want to learn is how to lead your dates differently. If you want it to go to different places, then you have to know how to lead. And that starts with your voice and what conversation you choose to have, or how you choose to answer questions when you're in conversation. But there are a couple of key things that I've noticed over the years that you just do those two things and suddenly you're like, oh, damn, like naturally the flirting and the tension starts to build up between you both.
100%. I, for about 12 months, helped people with public speaking.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things was pitch, pace, tone, melody, and volume, right? So there were the sort of 5 key pillars that we used to help make sure that when someone was talking, that have impact. Now, same thing with flirting. Obviously, if you're using those things,
Yes.
you're going to be able to create a desired effect. what I'm interested then is going, well, okay, that's someone that's gotten a foot in the door, right? So let's even take a step back.
Hmm.
Um, and let's talk about flirting, maybe whether it's in a workplace or an environment where you see someone regularly, but
Yep.
haven't actually had the conversation. So,
Mm.
without even talking, what are some of the things that you would deem as non creepy flirting sort of things that you can do? And what do you think would toe the line with going, all right, dude, that's creepy. Please don't do that?
What would toe the line? Oh, I mean, naturally, as we talk about this, I do what I would do if I was flirting, right? It's like the smiling and they're like, What are you looking at?" Like, it's kind of like this, you don't say anything. So especially, I've flirted with people at work. If you're flirting at work, I mean, it's a professional environment, so you definitely don't want to cross that line. But you can have fun, and this is, I think, the difference between flirting in a very intimate way on a date, for example, versus one of my clients from the US. I love the way he put it. He's like, "Sarah, every day I'm flirting. Like, I just flirt with the world." That's the way he described it, right? In his training, he was like, "I'm just bringing this playful communication into my friendships, into the way I talk to, my employees. Like, it doesn't have to have this intimate, romantic connection to it. It's really just a form of how we communicate." So I think, looking at someone teasing them, self-deprecating humor is another great way, but sort of teasing somebody, so challenging what they've done or going, "Are you sure about that?" And they go, What do you mean?" "Yeah." Is that the right way you should be doing it?" So you challenge them, and that invites them into the friction, right? So the friction creates, again, a potential for, a way of flirting, but it's, I would say, on the safer side. So it's not in that intimate realm because you don't have the intention. I think going over the line, like the classic ones are, let's say compliments, but if they're compliments about someone's appearance, and you've said like two or three compliments about another person's appearance, that's when it can get a bit weird. It's like, okay, I heard you the first time and the second time, and now it's like, it's a little bit too much. So I'd say that's towing the line or crossing the line. Whereas if you're complimenting on who they are, or how they do something, that's on the safer side if you're in environments like that. Not that I'm promoting
That's a
flirting at
great piece
work
of it.
here, guys, but yeah, it's like
Well, I mean, I don't mind the idea of interchanging the words flirting and playfulness,
yeah.
because at the end of the day, if you're not playful,
Mm,
then you don't have any capacity to develop rapport, charisma, vibe, energy, so I guess it's taking away, like you said, the actual intimate part of flirting
mhm,
out of it for
mhm.
a second. And this is a good training ground for blokes that are struggling as well, because they're like, well, actually, I can flirt without trying to pick someone up.
Yep.
And that playfulness, that art of being able to get cheeky and converse in a way which draws out different emotions from people is a good way to at least get the ball started, right?
And it takes away a lot of pressure for guys too, because so many guys think, I need to get something sexual from this. Like, my intention in my mind is that this will lead to something sexual, right? And that makes the pressure go up. It's like, oh crap. And then that makes you feel like if you fail, you've lost a lot more. Whereas if you take that away and just approach it as an exercise, a communication exercise, you're going to feel a lot more relaxed. And if you're relaxed, then they're going to feel more relaxed with you as well. And this is where the School of Life, they talk about flirting in such a cool way. It's right. Flirting is really the ability to acknowledge in somebody else what's desirable in that person, and you're just letting them know that. And that doesn't have to have anything attached to it. There doesn't have to be any follow up or something sexual in return. So I think that's a great way to start developing the skill. Is even like that guy on Instagram that goes around, I think the English dude, he's got very proper, wears that purple jacket, and he just goes around the streets of the UK complimenting people. The art of just
Mm.
looking at someone and thinking, what's the first thing that comes to your mind, and complimenting on that. It's a fun task. It's a bit scary because you're out in public, but it really does help develop the skill.
Absolutely. And I think Neil Strauss, when he was speaking, there was one thing he'd mentioned that I quite liked in an interview that he had with Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO. And he was talking about the art of seduction. And when you're talking, just to sort of mirror what you said, you're being outward focused rather than inward focused. So you're looking at the person and understanding what they're saying and being relatable to what they are and who they are and how they're talking, rather than how I'm feeling, what I think of myself, how I position myself in that moment. And so you're so outward directed that innately, whether it's flirting or seduction or whatever it is, you're giving them the cues and the vibe that, hey, this is moving in a more organic direction than just me, me, me.
Yep.
So, okay, this is interesting then. So let's move on from flirting, because let's say there's a guy that's listening to this and he's gone, fuck, all right, well, here's the 101. I can get started here, and flirting's cool. All right, now I'll go from flirting to the approach. So I've said some things, but I want to ask this girl out, and fuck, how do I ask her out? Do I get her number? Do I go the Instagram? Shit, my Instagram's not that good. If she sees my Instagram, I have not curated any photos. Fuck this. Actually, fuck Instagram altogether. I'm not doing Instagram. Twitter's a bit too much. LinkedIn's a bit too formal. So where does a guy go? Because it's the flirting is there. All right. He's worked up. Now he's got to build the courage to go, hey, so what is the best environment, the best setting? Let's say for that person that they see time and time again, then we can go for the one-off spontaneous one. But
Mm.
for the person they see time and time again, how would they go about it, you reckon, in today's day and age?
Yeah, isn't
Or a
it?
couple of ways.
We've made it difficult, haven't we? With like, there's so many options. But to make it really simple, the two main ones still are someone's number, which people call old school, right? Or Instagram. And then if you're the next generation, it's the Snapchat, which I have certain feelings about that, but that's what we're working with. There's still the three main ways that people are getting contact details off of each other. Okay,
Mm.
so I don't think you need to overcomplicate that. But you're right. Like, you start overthinking and going, well, my photos are crap. And that is a really important part about how you market yourself in modern dating. Because if you don't market yourself in the right way, and I know it's cringy, right? Like, most guys are like, Sarah, I don't like taking photos. Like, I'm not going to go out and take photos of myself. But the reality is, if you want to participate in the online dating world, then that is really important to do that. And both men and women have a lot of hesitation with it, but getting good photos of yourself, setting your profiles up appropriately, will really help you stand out. And it doesn't have to be cringy and not a nice experience. And you don't have to be a men's influencer or fashion blogger or whatever. You can just go out and get some great photos organically. So I think that is a really important part about online dating. And when it comes to asking for the number, it's like, if you're using dating apps, you've got to build rapport initially via text, and then you want to get off the apps, honestly, as soon as possible. So transitioning, going, hey, I don't use the apps very often. What's your number? You've got to have courage. You've got to have the balls to ask for someone's number and to be direct about your interest. And you've got to be comfortable and come to terms with whether it's a yes or a no. And a lot of guys don't ask because they're afraid, especially if it's in front of people, how embarrassing if that person says no. But why does it have to be embarrassing for you? So coming to terms with what it means to receiving a no, and what your relationship is with perceived rejection, and why does it have to be that, and getting comfortable with just having the courage to ask for it. I don't think overcomplicating it needs to happen. It is as simple as just asking them, "Or what are you doing later?" It's like having a reason. It's like, "Oh, nothing." It's like, "Oh, do you want to get dinner?" Having the balls to do that. Like, not, a few months ago, a guy did that with me, and I loved it. I was like, "That's great." Like, you really respect that, because he's putting himself on the line. I could easily say, "Oh, no, I'm not interested." But if there's that interest, then there's the opportunity, because you've actually invited that woman, and she can say yes or no. So yeah, that's my headspace and what I see works. Like, that's what's working with guys that are doing it. They're out there, they're socializing, and they're asking the question. So many guys just don't ask the question, so they're not even in the game. They're just spectators.
So then let's talk about rejection. So let's say I go, hey Sarah, great chatting. Let's grab a feed. What's your number, right? And you go, hey Steve, look, to be honest with you, I'm not interested in grabbing dinner with you. I think you're a great guy, right?
Yep.
In that moment, as a guy,
Mm.
all these things sort of go. It's like, fuck, she's just proved to me again that this has happened. I'm not good looking enough, or I don't have the right chat, or I fucked up how I said it. Or so how do I deal with, as a guy, the actual downfall of potentially what could happen if you ask for a number. Because if, let's say, you hypothetically build the courage to finally do it and it doesn't
Mm.
work out, you need to go back and do it again. But a lot of guys don't know how to get out of their own headspace.
Getting outside, exercising. I know it sounds crazy, but yeah, I'm telling you, whenever you get in a funk, your routine, and I've seen this especially with men. I mean,
Yeah.
a man that has a solid routine, he always seems to handle rejection a lot better than a guy that goes to eating junk food or binge watching TV. Like that guy recovers faster and gets back into the game a lot faster than the guy that chooses, pizza and movies. It sounds so weird, but yeah, it creates a mental strength that allows you to
Mm.
handle it because you're not connecting your own identity and your value as a man with whether a woman says yes or no. And, you know, that's the difference, I would say, in a simple way.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think, once again, just not connecting your identity to someone says yes or no, that really means that you've got value within yourself. And so building value, building self-worth sounds like something that a lot of men that are going into the dating world, are going into that dating world, that are struggling,
Mm,
need to work on significantly as well. Because if it doesn't come out in that phase of the dating, I guess, asking the question, then it
yeah.
might come out during the conversation, or during, after 3 or 4 dates. They're like, I'm going to fuck this up, or
Yeah.
she doesn't like me anymore, or she's taken 4 hours to reply to my text, not 2 hours to reply to my text. So it
Yeah.
seems like that applies to all stages of that dating.
Yeah, you've got to date yourself first and foremost, guys. And I think there's men that I've come across and still come across. Right, you either choose your career and choose to work on that, or and just go, no, I'm just not dating at all. Right, there's guys that are just like career only. Not going to let myself get distracted with women because that's the reality is they let women derail them when they're on a roll. And it could be as simple as, yeah, her taking your time and then you sacrificing your routine that you used to do every day, and now instead you're choosing to sleep in longer, stay with her, sacrifice, catching up with your friends and doing other stuff, and before you know it, you've actually lost connection with what your life was, before that. So there's no one to blame, but it's just keeping, as a guy, making sure that you keep that as a priority is yourself, and having boundaries, because a woman's going to find that really attractive. You're a guy that has stuff on. You're a guy that can say, hey, I'd love to hang out, but I can't. I've got this, because you're a man of your word. And men that stick in that line of integrity and they tell you what they're going to do and they follow through and do it, it's one of the most attractive things that you can do. So I think it's a
No.
really important point and lesson for anyone that chooses to go out there into the modern dating world, because it's filled with potholes, or landmines, or things that are going to distract you from your own mission.
In the modern dating world, there's a few ways to date. Obviously, there's the old school way, and then there's the new school way, which is social media apps. So Instagram, and then you got your dating apps: Hinge, Bumble,
Yeah.
Raya. I don't know any others. And then on top of that, you've also got speed dating, right? So if we take a step away from the old school way and we talk about Hinge, Bumble, Tinder, Raya, whatever else there is out there, what are the absolute do's and don'ts that you feel are the most important things for men to know on those platforms, with setting up their profile first and foremostly,
Mhm.
in order for them to actually get the matches? Because the algorithm might work where it's like they like certain people, like if they like too many people, then they won't get good qualities coming through. Or if it's like, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
You're
mean, look,
laughing,
I'm not a
Sarah.
tech wizard with the dating apps. You'd have to ask the engineers those questions. And I know there's certain algorithms. One thing I always say to my clients, and I guess I'm old school because I love meeting people in person, or I love getting to an in-person interaction rather than always online. You've got to use dating apps with caution, because you'd find yourself after work swiping for hours, right? And it's really soul destroying if you let it. So I think not putting all your eggs in one basket. So it's not just going, okay, well, all my results from dating apps, that's how I measure how attractive I am in the dating market and my success, which is not a healthy way to be. And I've seen men build spreadsheets, swiping every day for a couple of hours, and really putting
Spreadsheets?
spreadsheets, 100%. Yeah.
Do you think that's a red flag as it is?
100%. I do. Now I do. However, and yes, and being in this world, I guess I've seen a lot of things, and I've seen guys really try and crack the code to understand dating, right? Like they're trying to find a formula and trying to find an answer. And if you're a guy that has an analytical brain, or you're an engineer who I'm thinking about, then you're trying to engineer something that is going to work for you, right? So you can get really lost in the weeds rather than just going, what's my relationship with these dating apps and how I use them? And I'm going to tell you the simplest answer of why you're getting results, why not you're not getting results on dating apps, and it is visual. Dating apps are visual. You know how fast women are swiping, or how fast you guys are swiping, right? Like a woman is looking at that first photo. If it doesn't grab her attention, she's swiping left. Like it's very fast. So that tells you that your photos really do matter. And it doesn't require a huge amount of effort, but I do also understand that it's fucking difficult and kind of frustrating if you don't know how to get good photos of yourself. Like there's a real art form to it, and something I love doing is taking photos. And every workshop I would ever do, or any client I catch up with, I always make sure I get photos of him, because one, I want him to know how to take an attractive photo of himself. Two, it builds your confidence to realize when there's an attractive photo that I show you, I go, that's you. Then this guy looks, he's like, damn, I look pretty good. It's like, yes, you fucking do. And that's what needs to be on the first photo on your dating apps if you want any success. Yes, your bios and the way you answer questions, or whether you use a voice memo and you can showcase your voice or put a video on there now. Yeah, all those things are great. But I just think the first sign to me of a client, right, who's putting the work in, is someone who's really taking photos and giving it a shot. It's not rocket science. You're the movie star. Women want to see you on show on the app. They want to see you as the vocal point in that photo. And you don't have to do a lot, right? Like good lighting, good style, making sure you've been to the barber and you look good, and the background looks good. They're really the major things. So I always say to guys, like, maybe a photo of you at a cafe, good lighting, good background, because a woman's imagining being opposite you. When she looks on that date, she's like, oh, could I go on a date with this guy? Oh, yeah, like, and she imagines herself opposite you. So if you can get a couple of photos like that, or a photo where you're doing something, and it's between the moment of looking at the camera and not, so it's like capturing a candid moment in between. So you're not just like smiling at direct straight down the barrel, but it's a candid moment where it looks like your friends captured a photo of you. You didn't want them to, but they've gone and done it anyway. They're the kind of things that are most successful on those apps. And so the simple answer is making sure that you've got solid 1 to 3 photos. And don't worry about getting more. Like 1 to 3, if you can nail that, obviously you can do up to 5 or 6, but just 1 to 3 that are like really great photos of you. And often we have friends in our circles that are willing to do it. And so you just have to be courageous enough to ask your friends to take photos of you. If you go out for coffee, say, hey, Steve, can you take a photo of me? Right? Like look at your environment and be like, the lighting's really good, background's cool, I've got my coffee or my smoothie or my juice. Hey, Steve, can you take a quick photo of me? And you get into the habit of doing that and getting great shots of yourself, and you don't have to publish all of them, but yeah, you hit the jackpot, and they're the ones that are going to help you in the online dating world.
It is really tough as a guy to ask the boys
Yeah.
to grab a photo of you. Like you are at a cafe and you are talking about what happened on Saturday night. And then all of a sudden you go, hey, bro, I've got my decaf skinny oat chocolate mocha latte in front of me. I really would love you to take a photo of me right now, because apparently the light is shining through the window and it's hitting me right now, and I've got to get that photo.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. And especially the the old Aussie bloke is going to go, fuck no. If a man in his 40s, he's going to go, fuck no.
Oh
But
yeah.
this is also where I always say it's good to have girlfriends that will help you out in that field too. And I think girls are a little bit more compassionate than boys when it comes to this stuff. They go, yeah, totally get it. And so I reckon for most guys, and if you look at guys' Instagrams as a whole versus girls' Instagrams as a whole,
Yeah.
if you want someone to take a photo of you, it's probably a girl,
Mm-hmm.
most likely, because
Yeah,
they get it.
they do. Yeah, I think you've got to lean on your girlfriends. And if you don't have any, then you've really got to work on your social network and getting out there in the right communities and start building that side of things, because a lot of people are lonely in this world, and they're looking for love. But once you find that one or that person that comes into your world, who is she going to meet? Who are your friends? Like, what's your community like? What do you do on a Sunday? What do you do in your spare time? All of that stuff's equally as important.
I'd love to then talk about speed dating, because I know you've come down a couple of times to Melbourne and you're based in Adelaide at the moment, but you've worked with some speed dating seminars, and there's another, I guess that's another way that people can, um, uh, yeah, date, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, if you've watched Hitch and you saw the two rows there and they sort of hop across every 5 minutes and there's a guy dinging the bell and then some other lady jumps up, so I haven't been late in a year, and it's all sort of fucking hectic. Is it actually like that? Is it literally like dinging a bell, move over, dinging a bell, move over? Hi, I'm Steve. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I mean, it depends which company's running it, who's running it. There's obviously lots of different styles of speed dating. Some are more intimate, smaller groups, dinners, things like that. People that have been meticulously paired with somebody else because of your shared interests or whatever it is. And then there's ones that are just, it's like mayhem. I mean, I've only done a couple of them, but it's mayhem. Like, you've got 8 minutes with someone, and this is where I think we can really improve the whole system. Uh, like, there's a database, right? So you upload your photo. Again, it comes down to this photo thing, right? So Steve has his photo, I've got my photo. So on the night, like, this is just one structure of what a speed dating event can be like. I now have 2 minutes to find Steve amongst sometimes hundreds of people if it's like a big event. Find him, and then I've got 6 minutes left of the 8 minutes that we were designated to get to know each other. So now you've only got 6 minutes to get to know this person. So you really don't have a long time to like slow things down and have a deep conversation and share on that level. So you've really got to be able to break the ice quite quickly. This is where playful humor comes into play, and it's really important. The charismatic guys at these events tend to do a lot better. They leave a great first impression, and they grab that person's details in that situation. Something in the old company, which is kind of cringy to say, but I'm going to say it because we used to say it all the time. Always be closing. ABC. Always be closing. Always be closing. So you meet somebody, and to be fair, this is kind of like the networking world as well, right? You go to a networking event, you grab their details, grab a photo, upload it into your contacts. So you're like, oh, I met Steve. Yep, podiatrist, like podcast. Put it in my phone. Cool. On to the next person, right? It's like very fast paced, and it's a little bit kind of insincere in a way, isn't it? But that's the reality if you're there and there's lots of people to meet and you want to make the most of it. So it can feel extremely anxiety driving for people that can't handle the speed of conversation, the loudness of the environment and everything. So I don't think it's for everybody, but you definitely have to learn fast at these events. And if you notice when you're really lacking of skills because you get left behind, right? People just don't notice you, or yeah, you got nothing to talk about.
Handshake or kiss on the cheek?
Handshake or kiss on the cheek? Kiss on the cheek. Yeah, definitely.
Great. Just got to
All
make
right.
sure it comes from the dating coach, so
Okay.
at least they've heard it.
Oh, a
Okay.
handshake, Steve. Please don't tell me you're doing a handshake on a date.
No. Hold on. Whoa, whoa,
Oh
whoa,
my
whoa, whoa.
God. Is this what you're doing?
I am representing some men that would have questions. Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm all right. But anyways, we'll move on from that. You can ask me any questions you want, by the way,
would like
Sarah.
to know how the dating's going, Steve,
Sorry?
I think your community would love to know how your dating experiences have been,
How my dating experiences have been.
Yeah.
Well, my dating experience has been interesting. So when I started more dating, I was much more of a later bloomer. I was super shy as a kid.
Yeah.
So I really struggled in school, especially with my like skin color. And like, I still remember in grade 2, right? There's this like Russian girl that asked me to go to her birthday. And I was like the only guy that got invited because she found me attractive. And my old man was like, "You're not going to this bloody birthday. You're going to watch us play cricket. What are you talking about?" And then after that, she wasn't interested, and there was no other girl interested in me for ages, right? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, thoughts go through your mind. Year 6 formal, I didn't have, like, I was the first guy that got to choose any girl to ask out because they put the guys on one side and the girls on the other side.
Mm.
And then I had to pick someone, and I picked the person that I was actually least attracted to because I felt that they wouldn't, like, I would feel bad asking someone that was like, so this was where I come from, right? I was so self-conscious growing up around asking, like talking to girls, all
Yeah.
this type of stuff. Then it was a twist of fate, but in my 20s, I actually, I had a bit of a change. I went to uni, grew up, met some awesome dudes, learnt the ropes a little bit, spoke a bit of shit. And then I started working in nightclubs. I used to run nightclubs alongside doing the podiatry stuff, which was two very polar opposite worlds. And so the whole idea of picking up, talking, communicating, bit of vibe, bit of energy, all of that became second nature because you had to be able to promote the venue. You had to be able to get people through the door. People would need your number to come through. So all of that started to change. But I think one thing now that I'm finding across a group of guys, especially in their 30s, is what happens when you're getting to the stage where women also have got a clock,
Yeah.
and you don't know if they like you because it fits their timeline rather than they like you because of who you are. And I think I've seen it with two of my friends, and they're like pretty successful dudes, all the boxes ticked, but they go, I just don't know if she likes me for me or she likes the idea of me. And I think that's an interesting dating dynamic and problem in today's society that a lot of guys are also going through.
Mm.
Um, if you were on the flip side of that and you had a guy approach you, Sarah, and go, hey, look, I'm doing pretty well, but I just don't know if she's that into me. It's probably the name of a movie, actually. What what are the things that you can do as a guy to be able to figure that out? Because it is a scary prospect that you're just fitting into what their needs are at any given point in time.
Oh, it's terrifying. Love is terrifying. You have to trust, you have to have faith, you have to take a risk. And no matter who you choose, no matter who it is, you are both going to go through really tough times with each other. You're both going to be the mirror for one another. And so, no matter who you choose, there's going to be challenges, right? But at the beginning, yeah, it's hard to tell whether someone's intention or what they want is true or not because you don't know them yet. And only time and observing their word and their behavior consistently is going to lead you to your answers. So it's pretty tough to do a cold read on somebody because everybody on a first date, second date, third date, fourth date, even fifth date, everyone's putting their best foot forward. That's what we do. We do a job interview, we put our best foot forward. Like, we're not going to show you all the sides of us that we think aren't great, or that might be red flags or perceived as icks or anything like that, because we don't want to jeopardize the chances. So I I empathize with guys that have that feeling. And also with women, I've got lots of friends as well that are hitting that late 30s, early 40s. So many more women are freezing their eggs, and it's becoming, for them, that's a really tough thing as a woman to have to go through, and to tell, a guy's intentions, or not wanting to move too fast, trying to navigate, well, I really do like him. I don't want to rush into something, right? I don't want him to feel pressured and to rush into something. But also, like, I really want a family, and I'm, 36, 37, and I really want this, and I really like this guy. So I think on both sides of the fence, there's challenges. And that's why, coming back to what I first started with, it's like you kind of just have to have faith sometimes and trust it, but you can definitely come back to your own inner compass of working out, well, what are your values, what are theirs. Ask the right kind of questions, observe the right kind of qualities in that person, and do your best to not see the person only through those rose-colored glasses. So I think, with women that want to have kids, I mean, if they're pressuring you and keep bringing it up, and they're not able to have an open conversation with you, that's probably a red flag to be like, look, take a step back. And if she really desperately wants to have kids and it's not feeling right for you as a guy, you got to have that, you got to have that hard conversation and be willing to let her go, because the last thing you want to do is force someone into a relationship and then feel like, you're not able to live up to that expectation, or that there's that disalignment between you both. So I think it's a real problem in modern society, but
Sure.
I think it's also something that yeah, you can get over or get through by having the right conversations that most people tend to avoid.
Let's talk about, you get the opportunity, you followed Sarah's guidelines to flirting, approaching, photo taking, and you eventually get to the stage where you have the girl that you've asked out sitting in front of you, right? What are some of the things that we need to know about as men that would allow and ensure that the woman would have that level of attraction? Now, this could be from where you take a girl out through to, do you sit beside her, in front of her, your body language, what you wear? Do you have to do dinner, or can you just go for a walk? Like, so in terms of getting to that first date, how would you generally structure it for most guys, in day-to-day sort of day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to know your demographic, right? I think one of the greatest things the clients that get the most success that I work with, they're always the ones that are passionate about figuring out, or being honest with themselves. Like, who am I? Who do I like to hang out with? Am I a big nerd? Yeah, I'm a nerd and I'm proud of it. So, I like to go to tech things, or I like to go to comic things, or I like to go to business events or self-development or health events. Like, really understand, well, who am I and what kind of people do I like? And also being honest about what kind of woman you're attracted to or what your intentions are. Because not all guys' goals in dating when they come to me are to find the woman that they want to marry. Sometimes they have never been on a date and they want to date. They want to find out what they like, what they don't like. So I think that's a factor. But on average, right, you've got to understand, well, what's your style? And there's, dressing well, right? There's 101s you can look up on YouTube quite easily, what's the general classic style, or what are the different style archetypes, figure out what best suits you, and like, your own style of when someone first sees you, the clothes that you wear. I think all of those things are very important for first impressions. And then when it comes to what kind of dates that you do, again, what kind of women are you dating? I'm gonna value certain things. Like, if I go out to a restaurant with a guy and he doesn't know how to order, or doesn't know much about wine, or doesn't know much about certain things that I value, I'm going to pick up on that. They're not deal breakers, but I'm going to notice it. So, just like different, I guess, social hierarchies of society, it's like you got to understand who you're going out with. It's the same in the professional world, right? If you don't understand the industry and you go into a room and you can't keep up with what the conversation is, you're going to run into similar problems in that space. So I think going for a walk, catch up, coffee or dinner, I think both are perfectly fine. These days, people have this fear of commitment, Steve. So sometimes when you say, hey, let's go on a dinner date, women freak out and think that you just want a relationship straight up, and that can scare them away. And then equally, women are like, oh, you just want to go on a coffee and a walk date. Well, that's just casual and I'm not interested. So at some line as a guy, you've got to draw the line and go, this is what I like to do, and this is the option I'm going to give her, this or that, and just roll with it. Like, you can't just be in indecision with dating, because you just won't survive. And I think it really confuses men, whereas it's just like, hey, yeah, I can catch up for coffee tomorrow, or what about dinner Thursday? And so there's two clear options, and you're going to work out quite quickly where she's at by how she answers that. And something I say to guys is like, what are your favorite restaurants, cafes, places that you go? So you're never on the back foot. Like, if a woman's like, yeah, I'd love to catch up, you have some suggestions in your back pocket. This is really important. As you said before, do you sit opposite them? Do you sit next to them? Sitting next to them is always better. Always try and sit next to them if you can. If you can't, then use it to your advantage. If the setup of the restaurant or the chairs and the table means that you can't be near each other, that's fine. You could move the chair so it's a little bit closer on one side, and just, you've got to have the confidence to do that. Confidence comes from courage, as we've mentioned a few times throughout this. So the only way you develop the confidence is through doing things that require the courage. So just take the risk and do it. I personally love bar seating. It's very controversial. Some people don't like it. I've even been on dates where I've said to the date, "Oh, let's sit at the bar," and he goes, No, let's sit on a table. The Americans probably do this better, but a lot of the bar seating is just awesome. You sit there, it's interactive with the bartender. So if you are a guy, again, that struggles with conversation, you can sort of utilize that to your advantage, because usually the bartender's very charismatic and, they get involved and it becomes an experience for the date as well. And activity dates are really great for guys as well that are struggling with your initial conversation. So yeah, there's sort of the couple of things that I would suggest straight up, but I tailor everything, Steve, to like the individual. Like if I'm working with a client, I look at what they're good at, what they're not good at, what they're currently doing, and then we tailor what they need to do and change or try out and see what works best.
Totally. And I think that last point you just made about actually knowing what you're good at is not a bad start, because if you, let's say, take you out to dinner, and because that's what we think you like, and then we've got
Mm.
no idea about what we're going to order or what we're going to do, and we're just fumbling over the fucking menu, and then it's like, well, why did you bother taking me here? And then it's so you lose a bit of home ground advantage, right? Because you get that
Yeah.
opportunity as a guy just to speak in sort of like blokey terms. You've got the home ground advantage here. You can sort of play where you want to play. You might as
Yeah.
well know.
And she wants to come into your world. What is your world? Like most women, if very traditional here, most women, if they're going to come into your world and nurture you as a man, like what is she signing up for? What life is she going to become a part of, right? Yes, she's got her own life and she's got her own stuff, but what happens when she comes into your world? What's that experience like? It's almost like teleporting her somewhere. So not being ashamed of your pickiness. Maybe you don't drink wine at all, right? But you love beer, or you're passionate about whiskey, or whatever it is. That's what I'm there for. It's like you have this unique code that no other man has, and that's what I'm interested in. If you show up like a carbon copy of every other guy, that's not going to stand out. So it's really about finding what that X factor is within you and having the balls to express that outwardly and show that to her. That's going to be the most attractive version of you.
Nice, nice.
Mm.
And then I guess the final thing I'd love to speak about is the idea of moving from a friend to something more than that.
Yeah.
So you have been friend zoned, right? So let's say a guy has been friend zoned, and he's like, "Fuck, like this is not what I'm after. Like, totally not." How does he then go from friend zone to potential dating zone, and is it recoverable if he's already asked her and then she's friend zoned him?
Some are definitely not recoverable. There are cases where you can get out of that. Yeah, there's
Hope
some
has
where
been
it's like
crushed for some men.
some men do come to me and they're just like, hey, like they share the context of the whole situation, and they've literally just come to me to get out of the friend zone. I'm like, look, I think you're better off just cutting your losses and moving forward, right? Moving on to the next thing. But guys that don't get many opportunities or don't have much exposure to different women, they hang on like for dear life to that one woman because they think they're not going to get another chance. So I get it. Like it's tough out there if you don't think that you have lots of options. But I think guys underestimate their options and who they can attract. I don't think it's hard for men to stand out. Like 90% of guys go out to the clubs and don't even go and approach women. They just stand there and kind of give that little quick look and hope that they're going to come and start that conversation, or once they get drunk enough that it will just happen. So it doesn't take heaps of work, guys. I think you can really, acquire that a lot faster. But anyway, the friend zone is an interesting place to be. The friend zone is a way that your behavior, it's really the result of your behavior with her, right? So if you change the way you behave and change the way you direct and lead the interaction with a woman, you're going to change the result. You're going to change where it leads to. So if you only talk about the weather and you talk about what you do, at work and things like that, and you just kind of circulate between small talk topics, then you're probably going to end up in that same position, friend zone. That was so freaking boring. Like, get me out of this situation. Whereas if you learn how to lead your conversation in a different direction, nurture the flow of that whole connection to a different place, you're going to land somewhere else. So something that I often say to guys, to go from it being two people just platonically catching up to it being something that has the potential to end romantically or to develop the chemistry with her, is to have a different approach to how you lead the conversation. So something I do in my business is role play dates. So you have 15 minutes, and I section it off when I review them. 15 minutes with a gorgeous girl on the other end, and your mission is to lead that date and go into the territory of an intimate experience. So getting out of the friend zone into the world of love and romance and fireworks and everything. So the first 5 minutes is all about breaking the ice and building rapport. And the middle section is about going a little bit deeper, initiating flirting, bringing, like, changing the direction of where you're going. And then you want to leave it on that emotional high or planting the seed of catching up with them again. And I've found that this model really helps guys grasp how to get out of the friend zone a lot faster. And so they accelerate through some of the hurdles that guys think, or not hurdles, but some of the roadblocks that they feel like, okay, I need to go on 3 dates with a woman before I start flirting, which I think is ridiculous. I think the flirting can happen in the first 5 minutes of any date. And if it doesn't, then you risk not setting the tone of going to that place. So when you meet them on the date, like Steve said, do you handshake or do you kiss them on the cheek? If you kiss them on the cheek, well, what is that implying for this interaction with her? If I shake your hand, what is that? That kind of makes me, if I'm your date, go, oh, okay, like this is just two people like professionally hanging out. Whereas if you kiss me on the cheek and you're confident and you're close in proximity to me, you're now communicating something different. So getting out of the friend zone starts the moment you meet that person. The first interaction that they have with you sets the tone. Every moment that I spend with you, I'm learning what you want as a guy, right? So I think, it's simple once you understand it, but when you're trying to learn it for the first time, it can feel extremely frustrating. And to give you one real life example, recent client of mine, lovely guy, has this problem of getting stuck in the friend zone, very limited dating experiences, really wants to find love. And he came to me a couple of months ago and he met a woman during my program, and he's like, stopped sort of reaching out to me as much as a coach. And I see this happen a lot, and I'm happy for them, right? They meet a girl, like, oh, Sarah, I'm all good. And then a couple of weeks later, he goes, oh, Sarah, I'm devastated, heartbroken. She said she just wants to be friends. And like, he was gutted. It was like he was going through a 3-year relationship breakup, and it was horrible. Like, it's hard as a coach to just like hear the pain that it can cause somebody being friend zone. Like, it's shit. I don't think it gets enjoyable, someone that you think that you feel emotionally connected to breaking up with you, essentially. That's when he hit the foot in the accelerator and started to, approach dating differently. And he, would go to 3 or 4 different events every week, social events. He would actively be getting people's numbers. He removed this attachment from it, needing to go somewhere. And now he's at a point where he's able to, go on a date with someone. He went home and slept with them, which for him was a big deal. Not saying that's the goal, but for him that was big. The ability to be able to go from just women always friend zoning him to actually taking them home and, going on 2 or 3 dates a week. Right. So now he feels like, okay, I've got that option, the confidence to actually do that, rather than what he was doing before, which was not getting him any results. And I think when I look at him as a client avatar, it's like he was very formal in his communication and he felt like he had to be very polite. And now, in contrast, his communication is very relaxed, very chilled, very playful, teasing her a lot and getting to the point a lot faster as well. So that's really helped him.
Amazing. It's so nice to hear as well, because, there are ways in which guys that are struggling can work through it, but it sounds like there's just a formula, or there's a way in which, just a few basic steps that if you rinse and repeat, and it means that you have to go out there and you have to fuck up.
Yep.
But there is something on the other end of that.
There is.
To leave us, Sarah, is there anything that we haven't spoken about tonight that you think would be valuable for the men on the other end of this conversation to listen to?
Like other content.
So anything that we haven't discussed that you think is important to discuss? And there doesn't have to be, by the way. There can always be another podcast, but it's more so if there's something that you think that's on the tip of your tongue that you're like, Steve, we didn't mention this tonight. I would really love men to know about this part of dating.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think for me, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And that's really the main thing that drives me with my coaching method. I know there's real shit that we go through in life, and it's not easy, and it's designed for us to feel those emotions and to get through it to become stronger. But with dating, if you're not having fun, I really don't think you're doing it right. So yeah, you should be having 90% fun with it and 10% of the hard stuff. And so, yeah, yeah, if you're struggling with it, then I think seeking the right help, whether it's myself or different dating coaches or different people to help you through it or friends, it's so much fun and it feeds your soul in such a great way. And I think it's really healthy for all of us to have those strong bonds. And then I think the only other thing we didn't really delve into is a resource that I've seen so many guys have great success with, and it's the book called Models by Mark Manson. I get every client that I work with to read it because I think it's such a great practical book for guys to understand the art of attraction through honesty and through being who you are as a guy. It's a fantastic starting point. So that's what I would recommend as well as the School of Life.
Beautiful. Now, obviously, if someone's listened to the full conversation and they go, "Fuck the book, I want to get in touch with you," how do they go about doing that and reaching out to you so they can learn more about dating and getting out there and getting started?
Yeah, I love that. Fuck the book. That is the fastest way to learn, is to get out there and do it. So best way to contact me would be on Instagram, which is Dating with Sarah Official. Or you can email me at sarahjeavons.com. And yeah, just don't be afraid to slide into my DMs. I'll respond to everybody, and no question is silly. Like, no matter what you're going through, I think if you're going through a tough time right now or you're struggling with something, I'm more than happy to help you out with it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, for being the first guest to talk about dating, and obviously the first female guest on Squeezing the Plums. You did mention about growing up and growing some balls on a couple of occasions there, which fits in beautifully to this podcast. So I love that. Thank you again. And, I really look forward to hopefully having another conversation with you at some other point. But yeah, thanks for making time tonight.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate it.